I do apologise for the absolute state of my microphone, but it is what it is. For the time being, that said, just wanted to sort of show the video in just a second, but before I show you the video, just kind of want to give my 2 cents to a certain extent because, we live in such times now where if you call into question the validity of the narratives that are presented, you are obviously accused of being a science denier. You're accused of being a conspiracy theorist, etc. Or dare I say far right? Ooh, spooky, you know. But the reality of the matter is, I mean, you don't really need to be a fucking expert in some of these fields. I could think back to 2020 onwards with some of the narratives that were going around in relation to the rules that were in place back then, and I didn't think there was very much sense at play there. And, lo and behold, as time went on, I, like many other people, were somewhat vindicated. And the same principle is applicable here, in my honest opinion. When it comes to a lot of the alarmism that's obviously on display, problem, reaction, solution is very much at the forefront of a lot of the sort of narratives that are presented in order to justify policies. For example, when the base Slavic man back in the day started his shite with Ukraine, obviously overnight, just ending the cave. Remarkable, truly. However, what happened as a consequence of that? Oh, well, that's right. Sanctions. And guess what? As a consequence of these sanctions that seemingly did fuck all of our energy prices started to go up. But it just so happened, of course, that prior to the invasion of Ukraine, they were talking about phasing out fossil fuels and our reliance on these gases, etc., in order to sort of pursue green technology and whatnot. As I say, though, fast forward, hey presto, rising energy costs. Well, hey, just so happens that that's a good incentive to move away from the good old fossil fuels of old. Right? Anyway, so that's just one little example. But here we are now with our governments all across the joint obsessing over this idea that the planet is burning to a cinder. And again, I literally just can't take them seriously because if they were serious, if they were sincere, if the science that they speak about was seriously as concrete as they insist that it is, why is it that they can spend the vast majority of their time when they appear in Parliament and media press conferences, etc.? Why is it that they barely speak about the issue? They can sit and talk about the LGBT. They can sit and talk about the next election. They can sit and talk about this, that, and the other. Yeah, the planet's apparently burning, so surely all this bullshit should be irrelevant. But regardless, it's what it is, clearly. But anyway, the clip that I came across, remarkable. And I will play it in just a second. Before I do, I just want to add somewhat of a context here, just because it's fucking remarkable. So, remember a few years ago, Glasgow, when they all flew in their CO2 emitting planes, shot out so much CO2, doubled the amount of CO2 that was on display from the COP the year prior. And they all came in, they all flew into Glasgow in private jets to talk about CO2, ways to tax you, ways to fuck your life up, the little circle jerks, And again, another way to poke little holes through these nonsensical narratives, right? 2020 onwards, we were all taught to work from home, etc. Right? Zoom, phone calls, emails, Skype. Why do they not do these things? And why is it only once a year these people fucking speak about these issues? Right? But again, anyway, Glasgow, CO2, right? Bear that in mind with I'm going to share in just a second. But I want to just, refresh people's memories just a wee bit. What's the impact on private jets? COP26, okay? There has been criticism of the number of world leaders and other delegates who have traveled to COP in private jets, okay? And people that were sort of monitoring it at the time, I think the figure does get mentioned down here somewhere. Flight Radar, which tracks flights, has looked at the number of non-commercial flights into Glasgow, etc. since 27th of October, excluding cargo. It's found that there were about 182 such flights, which is about double the total for the previous 6 days. Yes. The COP26 conference set a record for CO2 emissions. The UN summit in Glasgow this year is projected to have a carbon footprint that roughly doubles that of the Glasgow summit. I mean, it's funny. Funny how this shit works. Seriously. You know, there's another article here, you know. The fact that even like the BBC and whatnot were talking about it back in the day, remarkable. How green was the CO2, COP26 climate summit? Very sustainable indeed, you know. You know, fast forward a few years, and what do we have? Amazon forest has been failed to build road for the next climate summit. Isn't that something? Remarkable stuff, okay? But again, though, plain shitting out CO2, right? Bear that in mind, because this tiny little clip here that I have just goes to show that these people are full of shit. They will find any way they fucking can to screw you over. Not that most of us could afford a private jet anyway, but it's just the nonsense they come out with, right? Oh, now we'll get the video now.
Parliamentary Ross Greer.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This morning, Oxfam published a report showing a huge increase in private jet travel in and out of Scotland. Private jets are a disaster for the climate. They're 20 to 30 times more polluting than regular commercial air travel. 2 of the 3 airports that have seen the significant increase are owned by the Scottish Government. Air departure tax has not been devolved, but could the First Minister commit to introducing a charge at Scottish Government-owned airports to ensure that these super-rich elites pay for the amount of pollution they're throwing into our atmosphere?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I've already stated that I'm interested in the suggestion of higher tax rates on private jet flights. We continue to explore all options for implementing air departure tax, but this must be done in a way that protects the connectivity of the Highlands and Islands and the lifeline services that these communities rely upon. So I understand and I sympathise with the points that Mr Greer is raising today, and we will consider that as part of the steps on air departure tax. But as I think Mr Greer will know, there is an incredible amount of complexity in these issues, and we have to make sure we've got a sustainable way that doesn't in any way undermine the approach that we take in the Highlands and Islands.